Winter came out of the tea house with a strange expression on his face. He once asked Violet if she wanted him to report to her every day about what he did. He was such a fool. It wasn't until he was 29 that he realized that love was being interested in someone and wondering where they were. Winter, anxious and lost in thought, finds his wife Violet at a jewelry store. He silently hugs her, revealing his fears and vulnerabilities about being abandoned. Violet reassures him, and they decide to shop for pearls together. He reveled his anxiety about being abandoned by Violet. This confession highlights Winter's deep care and love for her, despite his previous difficulties and fears, making Violet realize his thoughtful actions. Winter, feeling exposed yet understood, sighs as he reflects on his journey with Violet. 3 days later, on the morning of the family meeting, Violet leisurely prepares herself, wearing a navy blue dress adorned with pearls and gold earrings. Winter, complimenting her appearance, and they share a light-hearted moment before heading out. As they leave the mansion, Winter is surprised by the modest preparations Violet made for the meeting, expecting more extravagance. He realizes Violet focused on inviting ordinary people and unions, rather than on pomp and ceremony, emphasizing the importance of the event for the community. Ash Lawrence arrives with a grand entourage, but Violet and Winter stand firm in their approach, engaging with the gathered crowd and reporters. Winter taunts Ash, who responds with disdain, but the tension is lightened when a drone from Canuck Aviation Industries appears, congratulating Violet on the meeting. Despite Winter's earlier frustrations, Violet maintains her composure, and they proceed with the event. Winter orders Hyle to arrange for food for the gathered citizens and heads to the company. Eglin, eager to support, joins him, and Hyle is impressed by the intelligence gathered for their business dealings, though acknowledging the shady methods involved. In summary, Violet and Winter manage the family meeting with a focus on community and authenticity, contrasting with Ash's grandiosity, and face the challenges with resilience and a touch of humor. On the morning of the family meeting, Winter, treating his servants with high standards, was impressed by the meticulous preparations overseen by the housekeeper, Lulu. The garden, adorned with autumn leaves and white flowers, left the Lawrence family in awe. Despite her past reluctance to host parties, Violet organized this event with great care, aiming to focus on the community and the family's reputation. As the meeting progressed after a splendid dinner, differing opinions surfaced. Jeff, Violet's cousin, questioned the necessity of their actions, while Violet's grandmother, Mary, and brother, Anthony, debated the family's legacy versus evolving times. Angela, Violet's cousin, emphasized preserving the family's justice over its authority, supported subtly by her husband, Benjamin. Ash Lawrence, harboring resentment towards Winter, accused Violet of degrading the family's status. Violet defended her husband and the family's honor, explaining her desire for the Lawrence family to be beloved by the Rock-Crowned people. She argued for separating the family from Parliament to maintain their honor. Ash glared at her and said, "What part of your actions is honorable? Ash, do you remember what my husband, Lord Winter, paid for the money? I know. How could I forget that you, a foreigner, wanted to have the title of Duke? Yeah, that one," Violet continued, watching him. "If you didn't give it to him, you should have given him the money back or said sorry. I am so grateful that I dared to let him marry someone of royal blood." Violet laughed in vain at his words. "If you take credit for it, it's not yours, it's mine. If things were as they were, you should have taken care of it since you inherited the throne right after our father passed away." Violet continued, looking intently at Ash. "You don't know how to be grateful, and you only insult him as a vulgar person and a foreigner. Even animals know how to be grateful to their benefactors. I think I should teach you how to be grateful even now. So I need to hear your thanks right away." Ash's face twisted in anger. He couldn't control his temper any longer and, in a fit of rage, he grabbed his glass of red wine and threw it at Violet. The room fell silent as everyone watched in shock. The red wine stained her dress, but Violet stood tall, her gaze unwavering. Ella, their mother, stood up, her voice trembling with anger. "Ash Lawrence." "Yes, mother," Ash responded, expecting her to defend him. "You are not qualified to be here, and you are not qualified to vote. Get out of here immediately. Ash's eyes widened in disbelief. He had never imagined that his own mother would side with Violet over him. He looked around the room, seeking support, but found only disapproval and disappointment in the eyes of his family members. Defeated, he turned and left the room, the weight of his actions sinking in. The room remained silent, the gravity of the situation settling over everyone. Violet took a deep breath and began to speak again, her voice steady. I love this family, and I believe in our honor. We must adapt and change, but we must also remember what makes us truly noble. It's not our titles or our wealth, but our actions and our integrity. The family members nodded in agreement, the tension in the room easing as they listened to Violet's words. The meeting continued, but the dynamic had shifted. Violet's leadership and composure had won the respect of her family, and the path forward seemed clearer than ever. Angela, Aaron, and the butler quickly came to her aid. As Violet prepared, she reassured Jen and Lulu that she would handle the situation with Ash, who had been expelled from the meeting by their mother, Ella. After the meeting, Ella, reflecting on her past favoritism towards Ash and neglect of Violet, approached Violet to mend their relationship. Despite Ella's regrets, Violet hinted that it might be too late for reconciliation, but they agreed to try. Ella later questioned Flip, a servant, about Violet's struggles, leading to the revelation that Violet once harmed herself and might have experienced a body-switching incident. Ella, overwhelmed by guilt and sorrow for neglecting her daughter in favor of Ash, retreated to a bedroom prepared by Winter. There, she reflected on her mistakes and wept, realizing the depth of Violet's suffering and her own failure as a mother. After changing into a beautiful crimson dress, Violet rejoined the meeting. Reporters surrounded the table, eager for news. Violet asked for a vote on putting the Lawrence family's seat up for election. All attendees, including Lawrence and Jeff, raised their hands in favor. Reporters quickly left to report the news, causing a slight commotion. Violet announced that 3 seats would be given up and invited everyone to enjoy the party. As she finished speaking, the garden lights and tree-wrapped bulbs illuminated the night, surprising the guests. Fireworks signaled the start of the party. Servants served champagne and exquisite food. Winter arrived and gently wrapped his arm around Violet's waist, comforting her as she trembled. He teased her for not conserving energy, and they exchanged playful remarks about greetings and courtesy. Winter's presence and support helped Violet relax and enjoy the evening. The garden party commenced with a table filled with fruits and liquor. Violet warmly greeted arriving guests, who were thrilled to attend the exclusive event. Violet's mother came to congratulate her and seemed eager to discuss their relationship further. However, she hesitated and decided to leave instead. As she departed, she muttered to herself, "I always loved you, Violet. I never stopped loving you. I always knew you were strong, which made me believe you could handle any situation. That's why I didn't pay enough attention to you." Her mother's voice trembled with regret. "But now I realize how much I neglected you. I ignored your pleas for help, prioritizing your brother Ash instead. I can't even remember what you said to me that day when you needed me most." With a heavy heart, Violet's mother walked away, burdened by the weight of her past mistakes and the longing for a relationship she had let slip away. After the guests settled in, Violet had a moment of respite, feeling nervous about the future. Winter handed her a glass of warm wine, and they discussed her concerns and upcoming plans. Winter teased Violet about her eating habits and expressed his feelings about the political changes they were making. The couple joined the party, where chocolates containing various prizes delighted the guests. Winter's support and involvement were evident, although he remained concerned about his influence as a foreigner. Winter and Violet later retreated to the mansion, where Winter noticed Violet's fatigue and took her to rest. They discussed family and friends, and Winter became anxious when Violet mentioned not drinking alcohol. He recalled her efforts to conceive and felt a surge of fear about their future. His anxiety led to a tense moment, but he quickly apologized and left, needing to be alone. Winter grappled with his fears of losing Violet if they couldn't have children. He struggled to calm down, feeling suffocated by his worries. Violet, concerned for him, knocked on his door, expressing her seemingly unrelated worries. Winter's anxiety eased slightly as he listened to her, realizing her need for his reassurance. Violet entered the room, concerned about Winter's anxious expression. She tried to comfort him, and they discussed their worries and the nature of their relationship. Winter revealed his insecurity about love without material wealth and his fear of not having children. Violet reassured him, explaining that his half-brother had suggested they might still have a chance to conceive. Winter was relieved but still anxious. They continued their conversation, with Winter expressing his need for Violet's love and security. Violet promised not to keep secrets from him anymore. Winter, feeling a mix of hope and fear, tried to joke about the future. Violet's reassurance that she would love their child no matter what comforted him. They shared a tender moment, with Winter encouraging Violet to be more affectionate and open with him. Their playful banter turned into a romantic encounter, where Winter encouraged Violet to explore her feelings and desires. Despite her initial hesitation, Violet responded to Winter's affection, leading to a deeper emotional and physical connection between them. Then Winter told her that he had been considering visiting Alica and suggested they should depart for Alica the following day. After a comfortable voyage, Winter and Violet arrived at Chiron, where Winter's half-brother, Harlan, met them to guide them to Alica. Noticing Harlan's pale appearance, Winter questioned him about his health and financial situation. Violet also expressed concern for Harlan, who reassured her despite looking unwell. Harlan mentioned receiving several letters from Winter about Violet's health, which seemed to be intimidating. Winter inquired about their acceptance into Alica, expressing frustration over the prejudice against mixed-race individuals. Harlan explained that attitudes had become more open-minded over the past 20 years, but mixed bloods still faced challenges. Winter's anger flared up, questioning the fairness of their treatment. Harlan, trying to ease the tension, shared a cultural belief about how babies are conceived, either riding the Milky Way or being brought by fairies sent by the fire god. Violet found the story lovely and looked at Winter thoughtfully. Winter joked about being half space, half fairy, which Violet found endearing, and she hugged him tightly. "What's the matter?" Winter looked puzzled but wrapped one arm around Violet's waist and rested his chin on her head for a moment. Violet laughed at his actions, and Winter laughed cheerfully along with her. The next morning, Violet, feeling refreshed, admired the beautiful weather from their balcony. She and Winter enjoyed a leisurely breakfast while discussing Chiron's charms. Winter, proud of his hotel, expressed his contentment with their stay. Though Violet loved the place, she preferred to live in the capital city, appreciating Chiron as a delightful vacation spot. She noted Winter's tendency to buy things she liked but was amused when he admitted he couldn't give her the hotel, highlighting his attachment to it. As they explored a magic tool store, Winter bought various heating items for their upcoming trip to Alica, delighting in Violet's curiosity. Violet playfully reminded Winter of his refusal to give her the Chiron hotel, which he defended with pride, explaining it was too far and important to him. However, when Violet persisted, Winter agreed to give her the hotel, admitting he would prioritize her wishes over his pride. He also surprised her with a sweet song-playing toy, revealing his affection and willingness to make her happy. Winter and Violet discovered a newspaper featuring a glowing story about Violet and Ash, highlighting Violet's influence and her desire for separation from the Lawrence family. "And people are calling her Violet Lawrence, goddess of people." Winter, excited and teasing, wanted to buy thousands of copies, much to Violet's embarrassment. Despite her protests, Winter arranged for Jen and Hyle to buy all available copies. After completing their shopping for magic tools and having a large number of newspapers delivered to the Canuck cruise, Winter and Violet prepared to return to Alica. Winter humorously remarked about memorizing his wife's articles, reflecting on Ash's desire for a title, and the complexities of noble politics. They discussed how Ash couldn't claim a title involving ownership of islands on the Reckle River due to Winter's ownership of some of them. Violet expressed her frustration with the convoluted nature of noble titles, while Winter resolved to purchase the remaining islands to consolidate his ownership. As they journeyed north towards Alica, the temperature dropped significantly, but the carriage remained warm. Winter became more contemplative, revealing his feelings about his estranged biological mother who had once walked the harsh road to Alica. Violet comforted him, showing her understanding and support. During their journey, they encountered a group of children in the cold, with the eldest boy threatening them with a knife. Winter quickly yelled the boy, who was terrified upon realizing Winter's Canic clan heritage. Violet, showing compassion, learned that the children were mixed race and ostracized, living in harsh conditions due to religious beliefs that labeled them as impure. Despite the children's initial fear and reluctance to go to Alica, Violet's gentle insistence and kindness persuaded them. She even told a little girl that she was a princess, maintaining the child's innocence. Winter, projecting his own feelings of abandonment onto the children, decided to take them to Alica, despite the potential religious backlash. Violet, steadfast in her beliefs, denied the validity of any god who would condone such suffering, affirming her commitment to helping the children regardless of religious differences. This compassionate stance highlighted her strength and empathy, subtly addressing Winter's own past abandonment and further solidifying their bond. As the carriage departed, Una, a child they had picked up, was given a bowl of beef jerky and chocolate, intended as emergency food. Una hesitated, unfamiliar with both. Winter and Violet, inexperienced with children, looked at each other worriedly, debating whether beef jerky or chocolate was suitable for a sick child. Unsure, Violet decided to offer the chocolate first, explaining it was good for energy. Una accepted the chocolate, and her smile reassured the couple. When they arrived at the temple, they were greeted by Panu, a shaman of the Canic clan, and several priests. Winter introduced himself and Violet. Panu declared that non-Canic clan members must make an offering before entering the temple. Harlan protested, but Panu insisted on a hefty donation for entry, specifically half of Winter's wealth. Winter, angered, grabbed Panu by the collar. Violet intervened, diplomatically asserting her royal status and the potential diplomatic consequences of insulting her. She suggested a smaller gift instead of the exorbitant demand. Panu reluctantly agreed but insisted the children could not enter. Violet gave Una some money as an offering, arguing it should be sufficient for the children. Despite his reluctance, Panu allowed them to enter. Winter, amused by the situation, laughed at Panu. Violet, though composed, was also angry but didn't show it. The group proceeded into the temple. Upon arriving at the temple in Alica, Winter, Violet, and Norther stood before a red-carpeted door where the god of fire is worshipped. Despite Norther's assurances of safety, Winter angrily resisted letting Violet enter the dark space, distrustful of the shamans. Violet calmed him down, and they entered together, hand in hand. Inside, they were enveloped in complete darkness, heightening their sense of unease. As they held onto each other, they experienced a strange phenomenon where their bodies switched. They briefly marveled at hearing each other's voices from their own bodies before their hands slipped away. Despite searching for each other, they felt an increasing distance between their voices until they were both engulfed in a darkness so profound it erased their sense of existence. Suddenly, Winter woke up feeling unsettled in his luxurious bed at the rock-crowned Capitol Hotel. Despite the comfort, something felt off. As the wind blew through a slightly open window, he grumbled and sat up, only for his servant Hyle to enter and ask if he was awake. Winter requested coffee and was urged to wear a tie for a formal occasion, which he dismissed irritably. Even after drinking his sugary coffee and preparing, Winter couldn't shake the feeling that he was forgetting something important. As Hyle talked about the rising price of coffee beans, Winter's mind wandered, particularly to his wife, Violet, and her peculiar habit of being barefoot despite her regal appearance. This thought nagged at him more than the impending important meeting. Suddenly, Winter decided to cancel the meeting and instructed Hyle to reschedule it. Ignoring Hyle's protests, he left for the train station and took a 7-hour train ride to the south. Arriving home just past lunchtime, Winter asked the maid about his wife's whereabouts for the first time. The maid, puzzled, informed him that Violet hadn't woken up yet. Feeling drained and annoyed, Winter went to Violet's room, which was unusually far from the main house. After knocking with no response, he eventually forced the door open, finding Violet lying still with empty pill bottles and liquor scattered around. Panicked, Winter shook her, but she didn't wake up, breathe, or show any warmth. In a flashback, Violet found herself behind a restaurant in the south during winter, where she saw a young boy, about 7 years old, who she recognized as Winter Blooming. Despite his young age, his handsome features were already evident. As she watched him tending the firewood, the boy noticed her and asked why she was staring. She apologized, explaining she was looking at the fire. The boy, who was losing hope of his mother returning for him, asked her to keep his presence a secret, fearing people's prejudice against foreigners working in restaurants. Violet agreed, criticizing those who thought that way. As Violet was about to leave, a large man, the restaurant owner, grabbed Winter by the collar, accusing him of stealing food. The boy, who was larger than his peers and constantly hungry, had to resort to stealing food as he wasn't paid or fed properly despite working all day. The owner beat Winter harshly, which reminded Violet of Winter's harsh speech pattern. Violet intervened, pleading with the owner to stop beating Winter. Initially, the owner was displeased, but Violet managed to persuade him by swallowing her pride and speaking softly. The owner relented, blaming Winter's misfortune on her intervention. After he left, Violet tended to Winter, who expressed his frustration and bitterness about their situation. Winter, still annoyed, told her to leave, but Violet insisted on checking his wounds. She wanted to give him money but found her purse empty. Instead, she offered her scarf, which Winter reluctantly accepted, complaining about the impracticality of noble women's dresses without pockets. Despite his gruff demeanor, Violet affectionately wrapped the scarf around his neck and complimented him, which he reluctantly accepted. As Violet's vision of the past began to fade, she advised the boy to be careful and not get caught stealing again. The boy seemed to want to say something but turned back to his firewood, trying to maintain his composure. Violet realized that the young Winter, despite his tough exterior, was lonely and didn't know how to ask someone to stay with him. This realization brought her to the verge of tears as the vision ended. As Violet's vision of young Winter faded, she found herself facing Una, the mixed-race child who had accompanied her to Alica. Confused, Violet asked how Una had entered, thinking she might be an illusion. Una explained that Winter came to Alica because Violet was ill, and Violet came because of their baby, which Violet acknowledged as true. Una then told Violet that just as she had suffered for Winter, their son wanted to suffer for her, revealing that the Kanak clan had the power to take away others' pain. They were now using this power to help Violet and her baby. Despite Violet's objections that children shouldn't bear adult burdens, Una assured her that many people were sharing the pain and that both Violet and the baby would be healthy. Una then led Violet to find Winter, promising to tell her about the god of fire. Meanwhile, in Violet's room, Winter was in denial about her death, demanding that Dr. Rickman wake her up. When Rickman insisted that Violet had taken her own life and couldn't be revived, Winter, in his grief and anger, attacked Rickman, holding a knife to his throat and demanding he do something. Winter's overwhelming pain caused him to collapse, feeling as if his heart was being torn apart. As time passed, Winter found himself preparing for Violet's cremation, a common practice in Rockround. Despite not accepting her death, he dressed in a black suit with white gloves, standing in the dressing room as his wife was made up. Hyle brought documents, mentioning that his mother Catherine would handle the funeral, but Winter insisted on doing it himself, feeling responsible for her death. Laughing bitterly, Winter mentioned the god of the Gentiles being in the fire, expressing a desperate wish for divine intervention. His laughter and muttering about the fire god caused murmurs among those around him as he faced his overwhelming grief and guilt. Violet followed Una to a hill covered with vibrant flowers and a small chapel, where Una explained the dual nature of the god of fire, strict and tolerant, symbolized by a snake and a flower. Una revealed that the god of fire had given Alica's people the power to share pain but that this power was fading due to misuse. She told Violet that her prayers and respect for other gods made her chosen by the god of fire to save many, including the Kanak people. Una then disappeared, leaving Violet to enter the chapel. Inside, Winter was grappling with Violet's death, obsessively maintaining her memory by keeping flowers on her grave and working himself to exhaustion. Despite his efforts, he couldn't move past his grief, imagining Violet alive and unable to accept her death. Hyle, worried for Winter's health, convinced him to take a break and visit the chapel for the first time in 7 years. At the chapel, Winter broke down, speaking to Violet as if she were there. As he took medication to cope, Violet appeared, seemingly alive. Winter, initially stunned, embraced her. He showed her the shoes he had kept for her, reflecting his enduring love. Violet reassured him that she wasn't dead and encouraged him to leave the chapel with her. Realizing that Una and the god of fire had given them this chance, they left the chapel together, symbolizing a new beginning for Winter as he finally began to move past his grief. The scene begins with Violet and Winter suddenly finding themselves in a bright, fiery place. Winter, realizing that the fire might be a divine punishment, becomes emotional and clings to Violet. He believes that the god worshipped by his blood relatives is angry with him for cursing the deity and entering the temple with a gun, leading to his 7-year separation from Violet. As they try to make sense of their situation, Winter recalls a vision of their past vows and blames a mysterious child for his suffering. He learns that he was supposed to be a shaman for Alica but was rejected due to his mixed heritage, causing him to use his abilities for personal gain instead. When both of them came out from Dark Room, suddenly, Violet and Winter's bodies switch, causing confusion and frustration. The shaman, Nuther, offers little help, leading to a heated exchange where Winter, now in Violet's body, almost resorts to violence. They eventually leave the temple, and Winter, still in Violet's body, becomes interested in the idea of developing Alica for tourism. They meet Harlan, who offers them accommodations, but Winter insists on buying the best house available, demonstrating his wealth and influence. The two continue to navigate the awkwardness of their body swap, with Winter expressing concern for Violet's health and making plans for their future. Despite the strange circumstances, there is a sense of deep affection and understanding between the couple, as they adjust to their new situation and reflect on their relationship. The scene ends with them feeling a unique charm in seeing each other from a new perspective, both literally and figuratively. A hospital where children, who were previously rescued, are being treated. She reflects on her husband Winter's remarkable physical resilience and the toll the journey has taken on her own body. Upon arriving at the hospital, she interacts with the children, who are recovering from malnutrition and colds, and listens to their excited chatter. After ensuring the children are settled, Violet arrives at a house where Winter, her husband, is waiting in a carriage, seemingly upset. She notices a light coming from the carriage, opens the door, and finds Winter sitting with a grumpy expression. Their bodies have been swapped due to some unknown reason, and as soon as Violet enters the carriage, they switch back to their original bodies. They exchange banter about their discomfort with the situation, particularly Winter's bruised condition, before moving on to discuss more serious matters. Winter reluctantly decides to visit his biological mother, Line, who had abandoned him as a child. They arrive at Line's house, where Line's husband leaves abruptly upon seeing them. Winter is visibly tense and hesitant, so Violet takes the lead, handing Line an ornament as a gesture of thanks for hosting them. Line, who has been crying, expresses her sadness and regret for abandoning Winter, explaining how she was young, scared, and overwhelmed when she had him. She recounts how she had to leave Winter at a restaurant when she was too exhausted to care for him, which caused her great guilt. Line packs food for Winter and Violet, trying to make up for her past mistakes. As Winter and Violet prepare to leave, Line hesitantly tries to explain herself, but Winter, angry and hurt, turns away, refusing to fully engage. Violet, understanding the complexity of the situation, tries to comfort both Winter and Line, acknowledging the difficult circumstances that led to Line's actions. Back in the carriage, Winter remains suspicious of his mother's intentions, but Violet reassures him that Line simply packed food for them. They begin eating the food, and Winter finds himself recalling memories from his childhood, particularly about the tough bread that caused him to lose his baby teeth. Violet listens attentively and adds details from Line's story, helping Winter piece together fragments of his past. Winter begins to soften as he reflects on his mother's situation, though he remains conflicted. Violet reassures him that, despite his inability to forgive his mother, her perception of him won't change. She asserts her support for him, emphasizing that she's on his side. This helps Winter to relax, and he smiles, finding some comfort in Violet's unwavering support. The scene reveals the tension and unresolved emotions between Winter and his mother, highlighting the pain of abandonment and the complexity of forgiveness. It also underscores the deep bond between Winter and Violet, who navigate these emotional challenges together. In this scene, Winter and Violet, a married couple, arrive at a villa in Alica, a quiet and beautiful town, after a long journey. Winter and Violet explore their new home, a lovely red brick villa with a beautiful view of the canyon and hot springs nearby. Winter plans to turn Alica into a tourist attraction, while Violet admires the peacefulness and beauty of the place. The couple enjoys a warm bath and Winter makes hot chocolate using his special recipe, which delights Violet. They share a tender and playful moment, with Winter expressing his deep admiration for Violet's beauty and character, while Violet affectionately points out the physical and emotional qualities she appreciates in Winter. The scene reveals their deepening bond and growing intimacy as they reflect on their relationship and the changes they've experienced. As they spend several days in Alica, Violet explores the town and visits the local hospital to check on the children, while Winter works on his plans to develop Alica's tourism industry. The people of Alica, initially wary of Violet, begin to warm up to her. Winter and Violet then discuss the future of some children, possibly related to Winter, who are living in a house outside Alica. Winter suggests hiring them and giving them a place to stay, while also planning to exploit the resources in the area. Despite Violet's concerns about opposition, Winter confidently states that he's experienced in overcoming discrimination and challenges, having faced similar situations in the past. The couple enjoys their time in the serene town, with Violet finding peace and contentment in the surroundings. The scene ends with Winter and Violet planning to leave Alica, but not before spending some more time together, enjoying each other's company and the beauty of the town. Winter and Violet encounter children playing in the snow in front of a house. The children, along with the guards, engage in a playful snowball fight. Violet receives 2 letters, one from the council regarding a meeting she needs to attend as the second in line to the throne, and another from Sharon, a friend from the Duchy of Das, who desperately requests to rent the Chiron Hotel for a winter wedding. Violet refuses to grant the request, frustrated by her friend's inability to take responsibility. Winter, teasing her, suggests they stop by the hotel on their way back to confront Sharon. A few days later, Violet and Winter return to the Chiron Hotel, where they are met by Sharon and Aus. Aus looks haggard from running away from Purin, while Sharon appears cheerful. Sharon tries to plead with Violet not to be angry, but Violet, though exasperated, isn't easily swayed. Winter steps in to calm the situation, humorously pointing out Sharon's lack of common sense, which Sharon brushes off, jokingly referring to Aus as her playful future husband. Winter then directs his attention to Aus, lightly scolding him for not remaining chaste despite his love for Sharon. Winter takes charge, insisting on making a tuxedo for Aus and managing the wedding preparations, even though Aus seems hesitant and overwhelmed. Despite Aus's reluctance, Winter forcefully drags him away to get started. Meanwhile, Sharon and Violet walk together, discussing wedding plans. Sharon, who links arms with Violet, asks about the flower arrangements, recalling a promise Violet made when they were children. They chat about Sharon's pregnancy, with Sharon mentioning that she has mild morning sickness and is mostly avoiding cheese. Violet shares that her own mother had severe morning sickness, but the conversation shifts when Sharon inadvertently hints at Violet's future possibility of pregnancy. As they continue, Violet is reminded of a significant detail: her period, which should have started during their time in Alica, is delayed, something she hadn't considered amidst the recent distractions. Violet experiences a moment of hesitation, realizing that her period is delayed by 4 days. Although this delay isn't unusual, she has been anxious since learning from Harlan that she could potentially become pregnant, leading to irregular cycles. Despite her concerns, she decides to push the thought aside until she reaches Rockground. Sharon notices Violet's distraction and asks if something is on her mind, but Violet brushes it off and follows Sharon to her room. Inside, Sharon shows Violet her wedding dress, which she had altered from her grandmother's gown. Violet admires the dress and expresses her regret about not wearing her mother's dress for her own wedding, which was modeled after a historic queen's gown. The conversation turns light as Sharon tries on the dress, and they discuss the upcoming wedding and pregnancy-related matters. Sharon mentions that her empire dress will hide her small baby bump and jokes about rumors spreading. As they sit down for tea, Sharon brings up her nervousness about the wedding, expressing gratitude to Violet for her support and help in the wedding preparations. Violet reassures her, and the two friends discuss the relationship between Sharon and Aus. Sharon humorously recounts how Aus had been too shy to confess his feelings, so she took the initiative by inviting him to share her bed. Despite Aus's initial hesitation, they ended up together, much to Violet's shock. Sharon's candid storytelling amuses her, and she continues to share details, leaving Violet both surprised and entertained by her friend's boldness. Later that night, Winter gently woke Violet up, reminding her of their plan to visit the flower market before boarding a cruise. Though groggy at first, Violet quickly became excited at the mention of the flower market. Winter playfully teased her about how flowers seemed to wake her up more than his presence, but Violet reassured him of her love, which led to some affectionate banter between them. At the flower market, Violet was warmly welcomed by the merchants, many of whom she knew from her time working as a florist. She received flowers as gifts and made a bouquet while Winter followed her, allowing her to fully enjoy the experience. They discussed having another wedding, with Winter expressing his desire for a more elaborate ceremony than the simple one they had before. Violet casually mentioned liking an empire dress, leading to more playful teasing from Winter about his knowledge of fashion. He asked about the best time to plan the wedding, and Violet suggested taking it slow, hinting at the possibility of a child. Winter, however, cautioned her against getting her hopes up, given their past struggles with pregnancy. As Violet and Winter reached the port to board their cruise back to Rockround, Winter took the opportunity to share something important. He told Violet that he was preparing documents to transfer Hagu Island to joint ownership between them and that he was also planning to buy 2 other islands soon. Violet was surprised and initially resisted, knowing that Hagu Island was no longer a wasteland but a valuable property. However, Winter insisted, saying it was necessary and reminding her of the honor associated with the title she held. Winter emphasized that Violet deserved the honor and rewards for her actions, including marrying him to save Rockround, which he saw as heroic. His words eventually persuaded Violet, and she agreed to the plan. However, she asked Winter to discuss any future big decisions with her, such as buying something or launching an airship. Winter playfully responded that she wouldn't let him buy anything if he did, and they shared a light-hearted moment. After a joyful time in Chiron, Winter and Violet returned to Rockround. Winter immediately threw himself into work, leaving Violet to prepare for her upcoming appearance before the council. Although Violet had regained her health, she was still distracted by thoughts of a possible pregnancy and decided to take up cooking as a way to focus on something else. Before Winter left for a business trip to the north, the couple shared a tender moment, with Winter expressing reluctance to leave and Violet reassuring him. They discussed their plans and affectionately teased each other, revealing their deep bond and love. After Winter's departure, Violet, along with her maid Jen, talked about the possibility of her pregnancy. Jen, excited about the prospect of a new addition to the family, tried to keep Violet's hopes up while also preparing for the doctor's visit to confirm the pregnancy. Despite the uncertainty, Violet remained optimistic and content, knowing she had many chances ahead. Winter, after handling urgent business, set off for a meeting with Ella Felice, the owner of 2 islands in the Reckless River. He intended to buy these islands before his wife, Violet, appeared before the council. Winter planned to acquire the islands to prevent Ash Lawrence from getting them and to ensure that Violet could retain control over all the islands. Winter and Ella met at a restaurant, where their interaction was tense and formal. Ella, disapproving of Winter's manners and recent behavior, criticized him for not writing personal letters and for sending correspondence stamped with the company seal, which she found inappropriate. Despite her criticism, Winter remained composed and explained his position, emphasizing the significance of Violet's contributions to Rockround. He spoke, "I know that Ash Lawrence was the one who would become king. But please look at them objectively. They are not son and daughter, but completely separate talents. If you could entrust an important matter to one of them, who would you choose? As you know, my wife is a good person." Ella paused at Winter's words. In the meantime, he continued, it was none other than Violet who accepted the marriage proposal of a foreigner like me to save this country from danger from the beginning. My purpose was the title. My wife's purpose was to solve the economic crisis of Rockround. I know that Ash's actions were also involved in that process. But who made the noblest choice at that moment? My wife was the only one who sacrificed herself for the sake of the nation's survival, not for her own benefit. Are you sure you can call your marriage a sacrifice? At the beginning of our marriage, I didn't want to admit it either. Now, I know what kind of person my wife is, and I know that she loves me, so it doesn't matter. My wife was the queen of this country. Even though she's not like that now, she's the one who should be the one who cares about Rockround more than anyone else. She's the one who has to make that choice. My wife always corrects me when I say that she's not a princess, but she still, always, makes choices that are more princess-like than anyone else. During their negotiation, Winter argued that Violet's selfless actions in marrying him to save the country were more noble than those of Ash Lawrence, and thus she deserved to have control over the islands. He proposed a fair price for the islands but acknowledged that the decision ultimately rested with Ella. After their meal, Winter and Ella remained seated until they finished drinking tea. Ella, after receiving Winter's offer, agreed to give up the 2 islands if the all islands clause was removed, which would favor Ash Lawrence. She asked Winter to arrange regular dinners with her daughter, Violet, suggesting once a year or every 2 years. Winter agreed to try persuading Violet, but noted that it would ultimately be up to them to reconcile. As they parted ways, Ella questioned whether Violet had any complaints about Winter. Winter, now back to his son-in-law role, assured her that any issues were being addressed. Ella was surprised by Winter's easy demeanor and joked about the cost of the islands he had bought. Winter, still smiling, asked for the necessary documents to finalize the agreement, expressing a desire to resolve matters quickly and return to his wife. Ella, feeling somewhat moved by Winter's charm and flexibility, considered that maybe Winter and Violet were well matched after all. Meanwhile at Mansion, despite Violet's anticipation, there was a delay in receiving news from Hyle. Jen, anxious, suggested calling the doctor. Violet, torn between wanting to confirm her pregnancy and fearing the outcome, agreed. 2 highly recommended obstetricians and gynecologists arrived to examine her. The attending physician, who was the last to arrive, was initially frustrated by the presence of the other doctors. However, he ultimately confirmed that Violet was indeed pregnant, much to her relief and happiness. Hyle felt uneasy as Winter, unexpectedly delayed in the capital, decided to go straight to the mansion instead of heading to the north as planned. Winter was excited to inform Violet that all the islands in the Reckless River now belonged to her. However, when they arrived at the mansion, they saw a hospital carriage leaving, which alarmed Winter. Hyle explained that the hospital visit was for a pregnancy checkup, as Violet wanted to confirm her pregnancy with additional doctors due to past issues. Winter was initially distressed, fearing the worst and feeling guilt for his past behavior. Despite his fears, he decided not to go into the mansion immediately. Instead, he chose to head to the north for an important drug deal, trying to manage his anxiety and focus on being a dependable husband. Violet, who was adjusting to the news of her pregnancy, found herself dealing with various inconveniences and emotional turmoil. Lulu blocked her favorite balcony with tapestries to shield her from the cold, which frustrated Violet since she wanted to see the garden. Jen, anticipating Winter's protective nature, advised Violet to be content with the current setup and promised to handle the garden later. Alone in her bedroom, Violet took time to reflect on her pregnancy and her upcoming appearance at the National Assembly. She placed her hand on her stomach, still in disbelief about the pregnancy. Overwhelmed by emotions, she cried, longing to see Winter and share the news with him. Violet deeply felt the absence of her husband and yearned for his presence, realizing how much she relied on him for her happiness. Winter's trip north proved successful as he and Giannis Heston coordinated a raid on a drug dealer associated with Ash Lawrence. The operation went smoothly, with Winter's strategy of blocking escape routes ensuring the drug dealers were captured without any chance of escape. Winter, discussing the outcome with Giannis, expressed hope for legislative changes to make it illegal for drug dealers to carry firearms, and Giannis thanked him for his help in clearing out the corruption in the north. Winter and Giannis had a brief exchange where Winter expressed frustration at being treated like a friend rather than a professional, and Giannis suggested they should have dinner together, though Winter declined. After handing over the captured drug dealers to the Hestons for interrogation, Winter returned to the capital, troubled by vivid dreams of his past. In the dream, young Winter, who had been left in poor health, observed a noble child being carried away and was later examined by a skilled doctor. Winter realized that what had truly been significant was the help he received from Violet, though he still felt no relief from his past mistakes. Upon waking, Winter was disoriented and found himself back at his home. Upon arrival, Winter was greeted by Lulu and reassured that everything at home was fine. He thought about his wife's recent secretive actions and how he would have previously reacted with anger and worry, but now he was trying to manage his anxiety. Lulu informed him that Violet was in the bedroom, and Winter, anxious and concerned, headed straight there. Inside, Winter was surprised to find Violet dressed in a going-out outfit rather than pajamas. Violet led him to a beautifully set dinner table, with candles and a sumptuous meal. Winter, sensing Violet was about to discuss something serious, struggled to maintain his composure as he sat down. Violet rang a bell, and the servants brought in the meal. During dinner, Violet expressed concern about Winter's recent dangerous activities, particularly his involvement with drug dealers, and asked him if he wanted to live. Winter assured her that he wanted to live a long and happy life with her and admitted that he often felt anxious, despite his love for her. Violet, touched by his words, expressed her own fears and insecurities, revealing that she had also been anxious about the future. Winter admitted his anxieties, and Violet reassured him, emphasizing that facing fears together was better than facing them alone. She then shared the joyous news of her pregnancy, explaining that she had confirmed it with 3 doctors. Winter, initially silent, was overwhelmed with emotion and began to cry. Violet, surprised but comforted, held him and smiled, finding his tears both touching and endearing. Violet comforting Winter as he cried, and she gently teased him about his emotional response, finding solace in their shared happiness and the news of their upcoming child. Winter, who has been emotionally overwhelmed, finally comes to his senses and rises from his seat, though he is still physically weak. Violet, his wife, supports him and reassures him as he expresses regret over his initial reaction to her pregnancy. Winter is filled with both relief and joy at the news of becoming a father. He fusses over Violet, wanting to make her comfortable and trying to do everything he can for her, though Violet tries to calm him down. Winter changes the subject to their recent acquisition of islands from Violet's mother, and Violet feels tension at the news. However, she soon starts experiencing mild symptoms of morning sickness and develops a sudden craving for vegetables, which Winter notices and supports. As Violet struggles with severe morning sickness, Winter becomes highly concerned and focuses all his attention on her, even neglecting his work. He searches tirelessly for fresh vegetables to help her eat. Violet manages to eat some tomato and vegetable stew, which brings Winter some relief. A letter arrives from Violet's mother, congratulating her on the pregnancy and expressing joy at the prospect of a grandchild. The letter also acknowledges the islands Winter bought from her, indicating the family's respect and recognition of Violet's worthiness. After reading the letter, Violet feels uplifted and reassured. She kisses Winter and eats the rest of her meal before insisting on going out for a short carriage ride, despite Winter's concern. She encourages him to return to work, knowing they both have responsibilities to attend to. Violet visits the capital's central bank, where she meets Kenjas, the police commissioner and captain of the Royal Guard. Kenjas mentions that his wife, Udal, who is Violet's tutor, is concerned about Violet's well-being during her pregnancy. Udal has baked cookies to help with Violet's morning sickness, which Violet gratefully accepts. Kenjas then inquires about the reason for Violet's visit to the bank. She explains that she is investigating the governor of the capital central bank, who conspired with Ash to take over land in Longwood that belonged to her. Violet believes this investigation could uncover connections to drug dealers. With the National Police Agency's authority, Kenjas begins the investigation, causing a stir at the bank. The president of the Capital Central Bank then arrives, visibly distressed, and demands to know the reason for the commotion. Violet, recalling a previous warning she had given him, meets his anger with a stern expression, reminding him of his involvement in the conspiracy to seize her property. Violet, while investigating the Capital Central Bank, confronts the bank manager who rudely raised his voice at her. She sternly reminds him of proper conduct and instructs him to come inside as the investigation is underway. Jen, Violet's companion, chastises the manager for his behavior, emphasizing the consequences if Violet were to fall ill due to his actions. The bank manager, fearful and defensive, questions the legitimacy of the investigation. Violet reveals that they found a check signed by Ash Lawrence from drug dealers, suggesting his involvement in illegal activities. The manager becomes increasingly panicked, realizing that Violet has been planning her retribution for years. He rushes inside the bank in a state of distress. Jen expresses her hope that the corrupt manager will face justice and discusses Ash's misguided confidence in dealing drugs, fueled by the dwindling royal wealth. Violet reflects on the troubling fact that once Ash becomes king, he would be exempt from investigation due to an old law. Suddenly, Violet experiences a severe headache and begins to curse, revealing that she and Winter have somehow switched bodies. Jen, initially alarmed, calms down and realizes that Winter, now in Violet's body, is struggling with the physical discomfort she has been enduring. Despite the pain, Winter is determined to return home quickly, feeling overwhelmed by the smells and discomfort on the road. Jen takes advantage of the situation to send out telegraphs and manage meetings while Winter, distressed by the unfamiliar sensations, urges the coachman to hurry home. Violet, now inhabiting her husband Winter's body, begins managing his duties with surprising ease, assisted by Winter's secretary, Hyle. Hyle, excited by the body switch, eagerly helps Violet complete tasks that Winter might have struggled with due to his constant concern for Violet. Despite her initial reluctance, Violet embraces the opportunity to work efficiently without the burden of morning sickness. As she walks through the company halls, employees cautiously congratulate her on the upcoming baby, but are taken aback by her friendly demeanor, fearing they might be fired for such familiarity with the usually stern Winter. Hyle, delighted with the positive changes in Winter's behavior under Violet's influence, jokes that perhaps the two should switch bodies more often. He also brings up the idea of naming the baby, suggesting Rosie for a girl and recounting Winter's suggestion of naming a boy Gold, after Violet's late brother Wayne. Violet finds the idea touching and agrees, despite the nickname's heavy association with her lost sibling. This decision further strengthens the bond between her and Hyle, who is pleasantly surprised by Violet's gentle and affectionate demeanor, contrasting with Winter's usual severity. Suddenly, the peace is interrupted by Ash, Violet's brother, who bursts into the office, furious over Winter's recent actions. He accuses Winter of involving their mother in a scheme to buy an entire island and suggests that Winter is unfairly linking him to drug dealers in the north. Violet, channeling Winter's assertiveness, confronts Ash aggressively, grabbing him by the collar and pushing him against a wall. This uncharacteristically physical response from Violet shocks Ash, who realizes something is different about Winter. Violet continues to confront Ash, questioning his actions, particularly his derogatory behavior towards her during previous family gatherings. She challenges his belief that he still holds royal privilege despite dismantling the royal family himself. Ash, overwhelmed by Violet's commanding presence and unable to exploit her as he had intended, leaves in frustration, realizing that Winter, unbeknownst to him, Violet is no longer someone he can easily manipulate. After 3 days of handling Winter's workload, Violet finally returns home, where the servants, who had noticed the body switch, are visibly relieved to see her. Violet sits beside Winter, who is struggling with morning sickness in her body, and they discuss the challenges they've faced during the switch. Winter expresses amazement at how Violet managed to eat and function despite her condition, while Violet playfully teases him about secretly enjoying his time in her body. Winter admits that he took some morning sickness medicine sent by a friend, which provided some relief. Just as Violet expresses her gratitude, their bodies switch back to normal. Winter, now back in his own body, feels exhausted and comments on how tough it is to endure the constant discomfort, prompting Violet to assure him that she is feeling better. A servant nervously brings tea, fearing Winter's wrath, but Violet reassures him with kind words, causing the servant to leave in tears of relief. The other servants, who had been distressed by Winter's behavior, rushed to Violet, tearfully promising to do better in the future. Violet realizes just how harsh Winter had been and lightly scolds him, but Winter responds by acknowledging how difficult pregnancy has been, encouraging her to vent her frustrations on him. The scene ends with a tender moment between the couple, as they discuss the baby's name and express their mutual gratitude for each other's efforts during the body switch. They settle on naming the child, Gold, a decision that brings a smile to both of their faces. Winter Blooming confronts his parents, James and Catherine, who desperately plead with him to unfreeze their assets so they can pay off debts and secure the release of their son, Dave, from prison. Winter, however, mocks them for valuing their mansion more than their child and suggests they sell it and move to a smaller house. Catherine is distraught, arguing that the mansion, passed down through the Blooming family for generations, holds too much sentimental value to be sold. Violet, who has been listening, steps in and suggests that they pass the mansion and title to Winter, who is also a member of the Blooming family. This suggestion shocks Catherine, but Winter firmly warns her against yelling at Violet, asserting his authority. Violet continues to persuade them, highlighting that Winter, despite being a foreigner and illegitimate, is a capable and worthy successor to the Blooming legacy. Winter, initially tense, softens as he appreciates Violet's support, though he remains stern with his parents, insisting they handle their debts themselves and cease considering the unborn child as their grandson. On the day of her parliamentary appearance, Violet wakes up early to prepare. She dresses in a neat outfit with her hair styled in a royal fashion, adorned with dark gray pearls symbolic of the Lawrence family. Winter, having finished getting ready first, approaches Violet, compliments her on how well the pearls suit her, and expresses admiration for the rare and beautiful dark gray pearls she's wearing. Curious, Violet asks where the pearls came from, noting that even during her time in the palace, she had never seen such exquisite pearls. Winter explains that the pearl shop owner he had previously encountered brought them to him. Violet also mentions that the herbs sent by Harlan have greatly helped alleviate her morning sickness, which prompts Winter to grumble, dismissing the assistance as minimal. Having experienced morning sickness himself, Winter is now overly concerned about Violet's well-being, treating her with extreme care, as though she were a delicate work of art. He worries incessantly about her comfort and safety. As they prepare to leave for the council, Winter's anxiety grows. He's worried that Violet might get motion sickness during the carriage ride, and when they arrive and she steps onto the ground, his concern is palpable. Despite Violet's reassurances that the doctor has confirmed the danger has passed, Winter remains distrustful of the medical opinion. Winter's anxiety extends beyond the immediate moment, as he's already planning to build a new villa in the north, concerned that Violet might suffer from the heat when she's close to giving birth in the summer. They enter a grand conference room where a significant meeting is to take place. Violet, representing herself and Winter, sits opposite her brother Ash, who is determined to contest her claim over the islands and the Reckless River. Ash begins his speech, claiming that the rights to the Reckless River and its islands should belong to him, the first in line to the royal succession, and not to Violet, who he accuses of using her husband's wealth to buy titles. He argues that the phrase, "all islands," in the legal documents should be amended to reflect traditional inheritance practices. In response, Violet calmly defends her position. She references historical figures from the Lawrence family who were not first in line but became rulers due to their suitability and contribution to the kingdom, emphasizing that legitimacy is about choosing the right person for the role, not just the one with the highest rank. She also affirms that her marriage to Winter was her own choice, made for the good of the country, not for personal gain or under duress. Violet concludes her speech by asserting that her presence at the meeting is justified because she, through her marriage, has helped Rockround navigate difficult times, making her deserving of the position she holds. Her speech is a powerful blend of humility, historical reference, and personal conviction, challenging Ash's claims while reinforcing her own legitimacy. And Winter immediately reacts by kicking a chair and demanding applause for his wife. The audience, surprised by his pressure, begins to applaud, but quickly stops when Violet glances at Winter. The chairman then calls for votes on the bill to amend the title to the Reckless River and its Islands. Northern nobles, including Robin Levi and Dole Albright, vote against the bill, followed by the House of Philip and the Southern Warhausen family. Drew Blooming, head of the Warhausens, also votes against it, surprising his family, as they had not expected opposition from him. Drew's decision is influenced by the realization that opposing Winter Blooming's will would not be beneficial. Winter, confident in the outcome, watches his wife with a faint smile, appreciating her composure. Though Violet doesn't acknowledge him, Winter understands it's just her way and not a lack of love. He resolves to playfully complain about it later. The bill is ultimately rejected by all, leading Ash, furious, to leave the council. He is intercepted by Kenjas, chief of the Metropolitan Police, who informs him that an investigation has connected him to drug dealers. Ash dismisses the accusation, confident that as a crown prince, he won't face severe consequences. However, when Violet appears and calmly tells Ash that he and the bank president will pay the price, Ash becomes agitated. Winter intervenes, covering Violet's ears and threatening Ash if anything happens to her. Ash's outburst and his yelling at a pregnant woman shock the council members, who express their disgust. Ash realizes with dread that he has lost all support. Kenjas informs him that he is no longer considered royalty, and as officers approach to arrest him, Ash's confidence crumbles. Violet tells him that this is just the beginning, not the end of his troubles. Surrounded by disdainful onlookers, Ash, now filled with anger and fear, is escorted to the police station. As Ash disappears, Violet stumbles, and Winter catches her, offering to carry her. He suggests she pretend to collapse so he can carry her out, which would further damage Ash's reputation. Violet hesitates but agrees, and Winter theatrically carries her out, calling for a carriage. The surrounding crowd expresses concern, and Violet, embarrassed but grateful, is hidden by Winter's coat. On the way home, Winter reassures Violet that Ash's reputation is irreparably damaged, even if he avoids prison. Violet, however, insists that Ash will face a prison sentence due to his involvement in the events leading to Carlson's shooting. Winter jokes about punishing Ash further, but Violet dismisses the idea, knowing Ash wouldn't be placed in a common cell. As they near their mansion, Violet expresses a desire to see the garden, and Winter, anticipating this, takes her there. The garden is beautifully decorated with snow-covered trees, lights, a bonfire, and ice-carved flowers, all prepared as a surprise for Violet. Winter proudly reveals the preparations, and the couple takes a carriage to her favorite tree, which is adorned with colorful lights. Under the tree, Winter kneels and proposes to Violet, offering her a pink diamond ring, a legacy of Olivia Lawrence. He expresses his desire to take her surname and live his life as her husband, even joking about giving up his title. Violet, touched by his heartfelt words, agrees, making a promise to live at least one day longer than him so that he can fulfill his dream. The proposal is sealed with the ring, and they return to the mansion, filled with excitement and happiness. As they walk back, they discuss potential names for their child, Theo if it's a boy and Olivia if it's a girl, reflecting on their future with affection. The scene ends with the couple leisurely making their way to the mansion, stopping to talk as the snow falls, before quickening their pace after hearing complaints from their servants about the cold. After a few months, Violet's delivery date had been changed. She was in her room, writhing in pain. Meanwhile, her husband, Winter, was waiting outside, anxious and helpless. Hyle, addressing Winter with frustration, said, "You can't do anything. Everything will be fine. Madam will give birth soon." However, Winter, overwhelmed by his emotions, started shouting in anger. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his stomach and collapsed. After a while, Winter regained consciousness and found himself alone in the room. He quickly got up from the bed, rushing to check on his wife. He found Violet lying on the bed and anxiously asked if she was all right. She reassured him, saying she was fine and that their baby was healthy. Moments later, maid Lulu entered the room, gently carrying their newborn child. Violet held their child, he couldn't believe how cute and beautiful little child was, especially his gray eyes. He wondered, how could this little guy cause so much trouble for her? After a while, Violet asked Winter to hold the baby. Winter hesitated, but Violet reassured him, saying it was perfectly fine and reminding him that Bond was his child too. Carefully and gently, Winter picked up his son. As he gazed into the baby's eyes, he was struck by how beautiful those gray eyes were. Suddenly, Winter muttered, "If anyone says anything about my son's gray eyes, I'll kill them." Hearing this, Violet spoke up from behind, "Oh, please, a child can hear that. Refrain from saying such things." Both new parents were overcome with emotion. After a while, the nanny came and took Theo. Violet insisted that she wanted to stay with her child, but Winter gently told her to regain her strength first. Then, he said, "You can spend as much time with Theo as you want, because now we are both parents." Hearing this, Violet's eyes filled with tears, and the husband and wife shared a heartfelt moment together. After a few months, the day finally arrived for Violet and Winter's wedding. Winter had promised Violet that this wedding would be the most beautiful and memorable one, unlike their previous first marriage. When Violet was ready, everyone couldn't stop looking at her because she truly looked like a princess, leaving everyone so amazed that they were speechless. When she was ready, Hyde escorted her to the venue. As she walked down the aisle, she looked so stunning and mesmerizing that Winter couldn't take his eyes off her. When she reached the aisle, he gently took her hand and told her that she looked like the most beautiful woman in the whole universe. After exchanging vows, they shared a kiss. After the ceremony ended, Winter's aircraft venture began. The aircraft was already completed, and all the guests were boarding it. Violet also wanted to go on the aircraft for their honeymoon, but both Winter and Violet hesitated because of Theo. They didn't want to leave their child behind for their venture. Finally, the couple decided that they would wait until their child was older before going on any adventures, as they were worried about him being left alone. After a while, they stood together, thinking about their bright future. Suddenly, Violet said, "What if we have another child for Theo? He could have a sibling." Winter replied, "If a second miracle can happen, then I would be very happy." Both husband and wife were overjoyed at the thought. A few days later, Violet was very busy. Her succession ceremony kept getting delayed for various reasons, and she was worried about Theo at the same time. She needed to secure the succession of Lauren's family as soon as possible. Then, suddenly, her assistants informed her that Winter's aircraft project research had been stolen from his office. Winter immediately returned home and called a meeting with the staff members. The staff members were anxious and terrified by Winter's behavior. No one, except him, only his wife could control his temper. When he entered the room full of staff, she started yelling at them. Due to the commotion, his child, Theo, started crying in another room. Before leaving the room, Winter told Hyde, "You need to figure out who the spy in our company is." Understood. He then ran out to see his child and wife. When Winter saw that Theo was crying, he stopped and asked, "Would you like to come to your dad?" Theo then stopped crying and reached for his dad, who picked him up. Winter apologized for shouting. While Winter and Violet were talking, a maid came in and interrupted them, saying someone had come to visit Madame. It was a count, a royal prosecutor. He was the one in charge of overseeing how the royal protocols were followed. He informed Violet that this was the first time in the history of the La Crowns that someone who was not a king or queen would be given the title of Three Rivers. He suggested that she should at least use the three royal crest symbol, one for the Lawrence family, another for the Count Lawrence family, and one for the king's old crest. However, Violet refused to do so. Seeing her refusal, the count proposed an alternative. He suggested using the royal bell for the ceremony. But Violet remained adamant. She explained that since her brother had already abandoned the royal family, they were no longer royals. Therefore, the bell and crest should be displayed to show royal legitimacy. The count warned her that if she did not follow any royal protocols, her ancestors would be very upset. Despite this, Violet remained stubborn. Both the count and Maid Jen were becoming increasingly frustrated, as they believed Violet should reclaim her royal status, but Violet was the only one who didn't want it. Finally, They tried reasoning with her, and Violet agreed to proceed with a normal ceremony. The Count insisted, "You don't understand, madam. Your husband, Winter Blooming, holds the most power on this entire continent. He can shake up the entire continent, and there is only one person above him." Hearing this, Violet was stunned. "And who is that person above Winter Blooming?" she asked. Both Jen and the Count were taken aback that Violet didn't realize the answer. Finally, the Count spoke, "It's none other than you, madam. Madam Violet, you are the only one who is above Sir Winter." She asked how she was above him. He explained, "Because you are the only one who can make the right decisions. You have helped many commoners and saved this country from crisis. Have you forgotten that?" Even after everything they told her, Violet remained stubborn. She did not want to hold her ceremony as a royal or follow any royal protocol. In the end, both Jen and the Count conceded, and Violet had her way. When Violet came outside, she saw some employees. One of the employees, a red-haired girl, suddenly stopped talking midway when she saw Violet. Observing this, Violet thought there was something strange about this red-haired girl. She then went inside and waited for Winter. When Winter arrived, he apologized, saying that the interrogation about who the spy was had taken much longer than he anticipated. Violet then asked, "Do you know that girl?" Winter replied that she was a data processing employee in their company. Violet said, "There is something weird about her." She then asked, "Is she from an affluent family?" Winter told her, "No, she is a commoner." Suddenly, Winter and Violet exchanged bodies. Winter was about to curse, but Violet said, "It's perfect timing. Finally, I can suspect and interrogate her." She then told Winter, "I think that girl is a spy because her way of talking and her manners suggest she is from an affluent family. Only an affluent person would know they have to stop talking or doing anything midway if a royal comes by. So she must be affluent." Winter grinned and told Violet, "Okay, you can go and interrogate her. I have some work to do." Winter was about to run off recklessly when Violet said, "Do not run in my body like that. Please, you are such a troublemaker." Winter went to a charity event and called Anjali to help him out. At the event, Winter, looking stunning in Violet's body, attracted a lot of attention. However, Winter was frustrated that people were staring at Winter. Despite his anger, people speculated about Violet's other side and continued to admire her. Anjali tried to calm Winter down, but he was not entirely receptive. Winter then called out, "Hey, come here," but Anjali suggested he use the name Aaron. Winter called out, "Aaron Lawrence, come here." Aaron approached and asked what Winter needed. Winter handed him a check, and Aaron, astonished by the enormous sum, asked if her husband had approved it. Winter, irritated, shouted for some numbers and said, "I don't need to seek anyone else's permission." Aaron replied, "Okay, thank you, madam. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Violet, who was in Winter's body, was interrogating the redhead girl. Violet asked her some questions. She asked, "Which house have you previously worked in?" The girl replied, "Philip House." Violet wasn't convinced because the girl's demeanor was so strong. Her aura was like that of a noble lady. Then, Violet had an idea. She took out a cigar, one that only affluent, noble people would know how to smoke. Not only did she take out the cigar, but she also asked the girl, "Do you want something else with the cigar? Or perhaps some wine?" The girl refused the wine but said, "I would like to have some coffee." The moment she mentioned coffee, it struck Violet because only a noble person would know the combination of cigar and coffee. They are the only ones who can afford it and like this taste. Violet then stood up and asked, "Which house are you from?" The girl didn't say anything. Violet called Hale from outside and instructed him, "Go and bring the families who belong to the north. I am pretty sure she is a spy from one of the northern families." Hearing this, the girl was startled. She panicked and tried to run. However, Winter's body was strong, so Violet grabbed her hand. The girl said, "This is not ladylike or noble of you to try to capture me or touch a lady's hand." But Violet, who was in Winter's body, clapped back, saying, "Do not speak like this. You are not in a position to reason." Then, They called other servants and started interrogating the girl. Finally, the girl admitted that she was indeed a spy. While interrogating the girl, she confessed, "I'm from House Levy. My family and I want to create a huge army to protect the city." Violet, still in Winter's body, responded, "But your house is known for making weapons. Why are you stealing someone else's project? Even without this, your family is strong, and so is your army." The girl hesitated to reveal why she wanted to steal their project. After considerable pressure, she finally confessed, "My sister was promised to be wed to Ash Lawrence." Violet was taken aback by this. The girl continued, "Ash promised us that if he married my sister, he would buy all our weapons. Right now, with no war or conflict, we're suffering losses." Violet reassured the girl, "There won't be any war, and your house will have to pay a huge sum in compensation. Otherwise, you will be jailed when I report this. The choice is yours." The girl tried to reason with Violet, but Violet firmly stated, "It's not going to happen the way Ash told you." After a while, the girl began to understand that Ash had no real authority. It was Violet and Winter Blooming who held all the power. She muttered, "If this isn't going to happen, then Ash will have to pay the price." Hearing this, Violet was pleased for some reason, even though the girl thought Winter might feel otherwise, given that Violet was Ash's sister. However, the reaction was different than expected. Violet went to visit Ash Lawrence at their family villa. As usual, Ash started acting like he owned the place. "You didn't tell me you were coming here beforehand. How shameless you are, Violet," he said. Violet calmly reminded him, "This is not just your property, it's our family villa." She then asked, "Why did you come here?" She informed him that a spy from the Levy house had been caught and questioned why he wanted to gain more power by involving the Levy house. Ash shamelessly replied, "Of course, I want more power. Just like you and your husband have money and power, I have military power. It's good for you that you did nothing, but you still have a lot of power because of your husband's wealth. So why shouldn't I seek more power?" Violet responded, "You should start behaving properly. You don't realize how much power I hold. People want me, not you. It's because of me that they come. I should have held the flag to my chest and rung the blue sky bell during the title ceremony, not you." Ash was angered and was about to retort, but Violet cut him off. "Listen, if anyone is going to sit on the throne, it's not going to be you. It's going to be me. I will sit on the throne." Ash was stunned. He had never imagined that his little sister would have the courage to stand up to him. She then asked, "Is it true you want to marry into the Levy house?" He admitted it. She told him, "Because of you convincing the Levy house to steal our innovations, their spy was caught. They will have to pay us huge compensation. If they can't pay, they will be in trouble, and they will never be able to sell weapons to our Luckaround house in the Luckaround kingdom. And they will always resent you, Ash Lawrence." Hearing this, Ash was shocked. Violet continued, "When I disappeared and everyone thought I was a criminal, pointing fingers at me, I thought someone would come and save me. I thought you, my brother, would come and rescue me from that misery. But you didn't. Now, you will finally understand what I suffered for so long." Ash remembered how he had exploited her, used her, and painted her as a criminal, silencing her so thoroughly she couldn't even speak. Now, it was his turn to be in that place of misery. The thought left him reeling. Violet turned and left, leaving Ash to grapple with his impending downfall. Spring had arrived, and Ash Lawrence's wedding was set. Despite Winter's dislike for Ash, Violet insisted they attend because it was the last day Ash would be a Lawrence and thus part of the family. Reluctantly, Winter and Violet agreed to go. At the wedding, the atmosphere was tense. The head of the Levi family approached Violet and Winter, attempting to greet them. Both gave him the cold shoulder. The Levi head tried to reason with them, admitting that although compensation would be provided, he wanted to avoid his daughter being banished from the country. Winter and Violet were not appeased. Winter expressed his frustration, saying it was Ash Lawrence's fault for scamming them and causing damage. Winter asserted that Ash was responsible for the deceit, not them. The head, however, argued that it was Ash Lawrence who had scammed their family, much like how Winter was scammed. Winter grew angry when the head tried to involve Violet, asserting that his wife had been sincere and that Ash was the one at fault. He accused Ash of cheating and lying, which had tarnished the family's reputation. The head remarked that Winter's manner of speaking was rude, but Winter retorted that if his wife thought he was rude, she would have told him. Violet agreed, emphasizing that it was Ash's fault and that the Levi family should have consulted them before making any deals. She said it was now up to the Levi family to decide how to deal with Ash, whether to keep him as a son-in-law or banish him. Ash then approached his father-in-law, but the head, clearly irritated, was indifferent to Ash's presence. Violet, unaffected by the drama, decided to leave. Winter admired Violet's steadfast nature, appreciating how she remained unmoved by such situations. As they left, Winter told Violet that she was always amazing and that he loved her deeply. After a few days, Violet's title ceremony was held in the royal palace. One guest muttered, "I hear she refused to follow any royal etiquette and procedures." Another guest muttered, "Oh, don't even start. Count Ringer tried so hard to convince her." 3 crests were hanging. First, the crest of House Lawrence. Second, the crest of Count Lawrence, and third, the crest of House Blooming in place of the royal coat of arms. While Winter and everyone were waiting for Violet's arrival, Theo went to his dad. Theo asked, "Where is Mommy?" And Winter told him that Mommy was doing something she must do. Hearing this, Theo tried to repeat but cutely muttered, and his grandmother and other relatives found it adorable. Finally, Violet entered the hall, and Winter told Theo to observe his mother, how she walked, and how she presented herself. The priest then started the ceremony, the only daughter of House Lawrence, the last princess of Lackround. The wife to Winter Blooming Lawrence, who was the head of House Lawrence and heir of House Blooming, Madame Violet Blooming Lawrence. The Lord of Reckler River that runs through the capital of Lackround and all its islands, must be noble in their every deed and be loyal to this kingdom. Do you swear to be so? Violet then swore and took the cape from the priest. Winter and all the attendees stood up in her honor. The priest announced, "May I present to you the Lord of the Reckler River and all its islands, Countess Violet Blooming Lawrence." The crowd then applauded for Violet and her new title, and Winter escorted her. When she came outside the hall, the dawn of blue sky bell rang. She was surprised because she hadn't given permission, but then Count came. He spoke, "Please forgive me, madam." Citizens who knew of the bell's significance insisted on sounding it, so we took it out without telling you. How can we go against the heartfelt wishes of the people? Finally, Violet agreed that the bell wasn't just a status symbol but represented the common people's love for her. She immediately understood that Winter had helped them, and he agreed. He told her, "This isn't a gift from me, it's from the people of Lackround. You'll remain the last ruler of this kingdom in their hearts." After a while, she called Winter and told him that she wasn't feeling well and maybe they should call the doctor. Maybe the second miracle was on the way. Dear viewers, as we reach the end of this incredible journey, I want to take a moment to express my heartfelt gratitude to each and every one of you. Your unwavering support, enthusiasm, and engagement have brought this story to life in ways I could have never imagined. It's been an honor to have you as a part of this journey, and your presence has made it all the more special. Thank you for being a part of this story for so long. Remember that every ending is just the start of a new beginning. Do share your views about this roller coaster story.